You're listening to a Mamamia podcast.
Mamamia acknowledges the traditional owners of land and waters that this podcast is recorded on. Hello and welcome to Mamamia Out Loud. It's what women are actually talking about on Wednesday, the 25th of October. I'm Holly Wainwright.
I'm Mia Freedman.
And I'm Clare Stevens.
And on the show today, Britney Spears' body has not belonged to her for almost 25 years. In her new memoir, she explains why now she's free to do what she wants with it. She's choosing dancing in her underwear. Also, new parents are about to get more money to settle into life with a baby, and who cares? Plus, there are just too many dogs. Discuss. But first,
in case you missed it, the women of Iceland have gone on strike. And that includes Prime Minister Katrin Jakobsdottir. They all refused to go to work yesterday. The strike was called the Women's Day Off. It's not the first time it's happened. It happened in 1975, and it's described as a day when women protest the gender pay gap and gender-based violence. So the strike wasn't just for paid work. Women were urged to refuse unpaid work, including household chores. I think I might go on strike for the rest of my life. So fathers and male partners were forced to take on the sole responsibility of domestic duties and childcare. The strike action caused widespread disruption across the country, as it was designed to, with schools and kindergartens closed across Iceland and just one bank staying open. The Iceland Prime Minister wants to achieve full gender equality in her country by 2030.
I love this. I want to know, if you're in your house on the National Women's Day Off and you pick up a dirty cup, if there are like women outside the window going like, scab, scab, scab.
Oh, yeah. And if it's your dirty cup, is it okay?
I love thinking about the absolute societal consequences of this, and if you did it for longer than a day, just all the problems that would emerge and how a society would not function. And it makes a great point, because that's why we need equality.
It's Britney, bitch.
For the first time in detail, we're hearing the story of Britney Spears from her. The 41-year-old's memoir, The Woman in Me, was released yesterday, and one part that has stuck out from the never-ending headlines is the reality of how Spears' conservatorship also controlled her body. So much so that when it ended, she says, freedom to her meant having authority about how she used her body and her image. When Britney Spears was 16, the media decided she'd had breast implants. Here's a grab of how talk show hosts asked her about her changing body.
There's one subject we didn't discuss. Everyone's talking about it.
What?
Your breasts.
My breasts.
You seem to get furious when a talk show host comes up with this subject. Okay, in general, what do you think about breast implants? Just in general.
Well, I think if that's what you want to do and that would make you happy, then I see nothing wrong with it. But I haven't done that. I think it's sad that people, think I've done that because that makes them want to go out. And, some of the fans that look up to me, they either think bad of me or they may want to go out and do that. But that's not my fault because the press started that.
She handled that with such grace, and how disgusting.
16.
You get furious when people ask you this question. How furious does she sound, guys? She sounds like a really, really angry person. But she was also asked about her virginity, while her boyfriend at the time, Justin Timberlake, was being asked about his music. She writes in her memoir, I'd smile politely while TV hosts leered at my breasts, while American parents said I was destroying their children by wearing a crop top. After she shaved her head, which she said was an FU to the impossible beauty standards she felt she'd never live up to, she was ambushed into a conservatorship, which also exercised jurisdiction over her body. She says, no matter how much I dieted and exercised, my father was always telling me I was fat. She says punishing gym routines left her feeling out of her mind, and her diet was monitored along with every other detail of her life while she went through the motions of her Las Vegas residency. She also writes, my body was strong enough to carry 2 children and agile enough to execute every choreographed move perfectly on stage. And now here I was having every calorie recorded so people could continue to get rich off my body. Ooh. Now, if you follow Britney Spears on Instagram, you might notice she posts some pretty bizarre videos of her dancing. Often she'll be dancing in swimwear or very revealing clothes. In a recent video, she danced with 2 knives and it looked very dangerous. In the book, she seems to explain this. She writes, "It's posting selfies either nude or clothed on Instagram. Some people don't understand the latter, but I think if they'd been photographed by other people thousands of times, prodded and posed for other people's approval, they'd understand that I get a lot of joy from posing the way I feel sexy and taking my own picture, doing whatever I want with it." Mia, does that background make you feel differently about the kind of content Britney Spears chooses to post on her social media?
Oh, it does a little bit. It's not quite my Roman Empire, but it almost is, thinking about what Britney's thinking when she's posting those videos, because there's a certain way that she wants to present herself in the last sort of year or two since she has had control of her own social media. It is completely sexualized, always, like not just sometimes, but it's always very, very sexualized. From a fashion point of view, it's very sort of stuck in when she became famous. So it's like that very low rise. She's always pulling things down so that they're really, really low and they expose like an acre of sort of stomach. She does pole stuff. She'd post nude photos. Clearly she's going through a thing and she wants to come across in a certain way. But to me, when she says that stuff, which is horrible about having her body controlled and how she was forced to present herself in a certain way, it's interesting to me that the way she wants to present it is still a version of that. It's still a version of very male gazy. I know we always have arguments about male gazy, but I really struggle with it and I don't understand what – she clearly wants something. She wants a reaction. She wants people to think she's hot. I find that uncomfortable to sit with.
I think without wanting to pathologize somebody who clearly none of us actually know, there is no question, the more you read about this book, that it's almost an exercise in how to drive a woman mad, right? Like, I know driving someone mad is a flippant term, but in this instance, Britney Spears has always been about her body, right? Always. Yeah, sure, she was a talented performer, no question. She had charisma, she had hard work ethic and all those things. When she was at the absolute peak of her power, it was all about her body. And the way the media discussed her, and I don't mean that like she was all about her body. I mean the way she was presented, the way she was manipulated, the way she was dressed on magazine covers, the way she was styled for every video shoot. And this was a time when young women didn't really have any power about that. The hottest version of her, if you like, was around the time that she was 20 and she was dancing with the snake on the video awards, whatever. And then for the rest of her life, she has been beaten with that stick of why aren't you that? When she was going through what was clearly a very difficult time for her, I was working in gossip magazines, I've spoken about this before, and we would use the state of her body as if it was a literal description of how Britney was doing. If she's skinny and hot, she must be okay. If she's like a bit soft and looks a bit messy, then clearly she's sad and bad. And we just looked at her through that lens always. When she was pregnant, she was mocked relentlessly for like dressing in something that seemed like a low rent way, you know, showing too much skin or not enough or whatever. And then how she bounced back after that, just enormously objectifying in every way. I don't know how you could possibly expect a 41-year-old woman whose entire life has been that to have anything like a healthy relationship with their body and their self-image, because the Vegas residencies that you're talking about, Claire, are like 10 years ago they started and they went for 4 years. So it's not that long ago. And that was entirely during this portion of her conservatorship where she was under complete control from her dad who, as she says, from her version of it, that he was counting her calories, sending her off to institutions if she wasn't entirely compliant in every way, including dancing how he wanted her to dance and performing how she wanted her to perform. That show made more than $140 million for someone, probably not Britney Spears, let's be honest, again, just off her body and what she was doing with her body. So, because one of the things I think about the way she presents herself now, Mia, is it just opens her up to mockery all over again. I mean, she has been memeified to within an inch of her life about how she looks in those videos.
It's very uncomfortable to watch them.
It is, but it's also been used against her. So the idea that she might be trying, in inverted commas, to be sexy in inverted commas, but it's just such an awful dynamic because then we just beat her with that too, because you've probably seen those memes that have the picture of her in that era I'm talking about, 20-year-old Britney in her low-cut bikini bottoms, and then 41-year-old clearly not doing so well Britney in her cut-off bikini bottoms, and they put all kinds of things under there like America before Trump, America after Trump, and all these things. Like her body again is being used as a message about what's sad, what's damaged, what's tragic. And
she says, and I didn't realize this, that once she had her first child, she became pregnant 3 months later with her second child. And she talks about the paparazzi hounding her and taking all sorts of unflattering photos, taking photos of her body as though her not looking like her 17-year-old self was an assault to them, was offensive 100%. To people. And I look at her and I see those videos, and she says it in the book that she has like an arrested development, like she is stuck in childhood. She hasn't matured past that. But I agree, Holly, when you read about all those experiences that she went through, it's hard to see how it doesn't drive somebody absolutely mad, and to this point of still aspiring to be the 17-year-old that was absolutely adored worldwide for how they looked.
Why do you think it is uncomfortable watching those videos?
Because she's clearly not well. I mean, I hate concern trolling. I hate projecting things onto people that you don't know. It's actually impossible to look at all those posts and read the captions and come to a conclusion that this is somebody living their best life. Like it just is. And again, after the knife video that you talked about, Claire, concerned fans, in inverted commas, called the police. And they turned up at her house, and then she posted about that saying like, I can't even dance with knives in my own home. And the thing is, I get that. She is just so fighting against everybody telling her what to do all the time. I just don't think it's a controversial thing to say she's clearly not well.
I've been trying to work out what it is about those videos that makes me uncomfortable. And after reading this, and then I went and rewatched them, I went, this is 41-year-old Britney Spears doing an impersonation of 17-year-old Britney Spears. And that's what makes me uncomfortable, because you're actually impersonating another person. It's not you anymore. And even the dancing, it's like a lot of that person.
But then the other side to that is, and this is what she says, and I don't believe that whatever's going on with Britney Spears, it means you should discount everything she says. She says she loves dancing and it makes her happy, right? So none of us should ever be saying to Britney Spears, stop doing that. Like if she wants to do that, then of course do that. But I think what's really uncomfortable is seeing somebody who you know is clearly struggling, and we're watching it not as entertainment, but like a slow car crash.
It's the dichotomy, isn't it? Because she says in her book, when she's talking about this sense of injustice she feels regarding this perceived contract that she never signed with the public or the media, and she says about the paparazzi after she had her kids, she said, they just kept acting like I owed it to them to let the men who kept trying to catch me looking fat take photos of my infant sons. And she said her postpartum body and shots of her without makeup were treated as some kind of a sin, as if gaining weight was something unkind I'd done to them personally, a betrayal. At what point did I promise to stay 17 for the rest of my life?
Exactly.
And yet in her, the way she portrays herself now, is she trying to seem like she's 17? Is she doing what you said, Claire, which is impersonating her 17-year-old self? And this, to me, echoes in a way the conversation we had about Madonna. In what I want is for there to be other options instead of women getting stuck at the time of their so-called sexual peak and fame, and when the world found them most sexually attractive, i.e. when they were 17 or 25 or 30.
But I don't think it's
sort of capitulating to that.
I don't think that's fair when it comes to Britney Spears. I just don't. I think that is really unfair with all of the things that Britney Spears is telling us about her life and what happened to her, for us to just be obsessing about, why don't you just put some clothes on? It's just so unfair. Like,
no, I'm not suggesting she change.
But we need to change our perspectives.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying I'm interrogating, why does it make me feel uncomfortable? Because you're right, we're reading all of this into her. She's saying this makes me happy, but yet then she's also has written in captions and stuff about here's why I use filters, here's why I airbrush, here's why I do all of those things. So
she might be using filters and airbrushing, but it's not like the product she's putting out to the world is what the world wants. It's not. She doesn't look 17. I don't think that applies to her in the way that you could apply it to like a Christy Brinkley who's, you know what I mean? I think she's in a category of her own.
And again, I'm not judging her, and I agree with you. She's clearly unwell, and we're going to talk about that more in a dedicated episode where we talk about the book and our feelings about it. But it's more I'm interrogating how I feel about it because, yes, she can do whatever she wants. That's the whole point of her being free. And it was interesting before she was free, the images that were on social media were of her in like white prairie dresses and holding flowers and all of those kinds of things. So the difference is really stark. And if this is what she wants to put out there, we have to respect that. Outlouders, we are doing a dedicated episode. There will be a link in the show notes. It comes out on Thursday where we will talk about all the different aspects of the book.
Mamamia Out Loud!
This week, I read 2 stories online that I once would have been leaping around a room about, but now I had to force myself to care. One was by Mamamia's Gemma Bath. It was about the shortage of childcare in her area of Sydney and how she's been on waiting list for spots for her son since she was 3 months pregnant. And now she's heading for her son being a year old. She's coming back to work and she cannot find him a place. This was exactly my experience with my first child, and she's now nearly 14. So progress? No progress there. The other was about paid parental leave. The government has announced that it's about to be slowly increased up to a point where it can be claimed for up to 6 months. It's currently under a scheme that was introduced between my 2 babies, if this is all about me, in 2011.
What is it currently? How much can you get?
20 weeks. So you get 20 weeks paid on the national minimum wage, and it's going to slowly slide up to 26 weeks by 2026. Now, in my books, this is really good news, although it's being rightly examined and critiqued for holes, like why doesn't it include super and exactly how the leave can be split between parents. And it's still miles behind countries like the UK, where your mat pay for the first 6 weeks is paid at 90% of your full-time salary, or famously in a country like Sweden, where it's paid for almost 18 months.
Oh, wow.
But what struck me when I was listening to this news story and reading Jem's story is that now that I'm out of that phase of my life, with one kid at high school and another towards the end of primary school, I have to really force myself to give a shit about these issues and go, isn't that good? They're extending parental leave. Oh, they should do more. Oh, they should include super. Once those things were burning for me and how important they were, but now because, to put it baldly, they don't affect me and they don't affect my immediate peers anymore because I'm past it. And I know this should be an obvious statement, and it is, but it was a reminder for me about how it's always worked to push yourself into other people's shoes. And when it comes to big issues that we need to be better at, we're really still only invested in the things that affect us. And if you are, then nothing changes. Clare, you are smack bang in the mat leave, childcare, costs, shortages, issues, right in that bullseye. And these policies do really affect you. Did you care about them 10 years ago?
10 years ago, I think they all felt too hypothetical and I didn't understand what it was like to even be in the workforce and getting a salary and paying rent and all that sort of thing. But I do think this is another example which is just fascinating in the current context about how you need people to have a voice in the policies that affect them. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you're going to get policies that aren't correct. The thing about all of these changes, because what you say, Holly, about being out of the phase yourself and therefore thinking it's not a priority for me, how do I get myself to care?
But to be clear, I do care.
Yeah.
But I noticed myself, like my interest is like, oh, whatever. And then I'm like, oh God, like progress is good. Progress is good. We got to keep hustling.
I'm noticing even just from being pregnant that the attitude from people who have done it before and have done it a little while ago is very shut up and get through it. And if there's anything different that we do today, which of course there's a million things we do differently today, it's very cynical and very, like, I went to a birth class and the comments I got about going to a birth class were like, why would you do that?
Who doesn't go to a birth class?
Well, I guess maybe 20, 30 years ago you didn't go to a birth class, or maybe you went and you've forgotten.
I went.
And so there were comments about the baby's going to come out.
Oh, right. So not that you're going, but that you can learn as much as you want, but it's still going to hurt and it's still got to get out whether you go to the class or not.
Yeah, even though you feel like saying, hey, do you have any idea about the birth trauma inquiry that's going on and the role that education plays in helping women? Like, you want to kind of argue back.
It's like my attitude to birth plans. Where I'm like, just don't waste the paper.
It's exactly like that. In this economy, in a lot of cases, you need two parents out there earning and earning close to their potential. So this model for paid parental leave, even for a generation above us, above me, might not understand why the nuances of it are so important. For example, the idea is there's a certain amount of leave. Some of it has to be taken by the secondary parent. They're saying dads need to take some of that leave. It's not all for the mums. And people might be like, well, no, I wanted to take the leave when I had a child. And it's like, no, this is actually to help women with the pay gap. Like, this is actually something to really, really help and
also
support
what it's
them.
actually meant to do is encourage more men to take it.
Yeah, exactly. And actually change men's perceived role in the
Right,
family.
and society and mental load ongoing, not just for that time.
Exactly.
Yes. And so I think these changes, like, the idea is that if we can have conversations about this where we remind ourselves of the nuances of today's reality that mean that these changes are so important.
It was important when I was having kids. I don't want you to live in some universe where you think that 14 years ago it was easy for me to not get paid for 6 months.
No.
Because it was really, really hard to not get paid for 6 months. And I missed the government maternity pay on my first child, but I got it with my second, made a world of difference. I'm a massive supporter of government parental leave, not maternity leave. That's not what I'm saying that, like, I have to get my head around what it's like for a new generation. I think it's more basic than that. I have to pull myself out of a selfish space where my priorities are now different. And I think we all have to do that often with all kinds of things, right?
But some people might be coming from the perspective of, I didn't get that much. Why are we proposing that parents now get longer? And I'm just saying that the economic reality of raising a family now is actually different. If you look at things like buying a house, paying for childcare, all of that, the costs have gone up so much that we need policies and approaches to parental leave that reflect that raising a child right now financially is actually harder than it was.
It's funny, the emotions when we were talking about this, someone in the office who's got young children, she said, I'm jealous. I don't want my younger sister to get it. I didn't get it.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
Which I thought that was at least very honest. But in Australia, you also not just have to look at the people, like it doesn't really matter what Holly and I think, but you have to look at legislators and the people who are in political parties.
That's why.
Now, in Australia, the average age of an MP is 40s. In the US, they're the only Western country in the world that does not have any form of paid parental leave at all. The average age of a sitting senator, parliamentarian, is, I think, 80, and I'm not even kidding.
Yeah.
If it's not 80, it's like 75. And yet the average age of an American citizen is 38. So when you have people making the laws and the policies that don't reflect the life stage, I mean, imagine trying to explain to a 78-year-old man or an 87-year-old man what even paid parental leave is when his mother would never have worked outside the home, his wife would never have worked outside the home, maybe even his daughter didn't work outside the home because she's probably 65 now. It's never going to be a priority. It is never going to be an economic or legislative priority.
This is true, and it's why it matters so much that our leaders are more diverse. And in Australia now, you know, we're making small headways with that. We've got the most diverse parliament we've ever had, bringing lots of different voices in. But also, you know, age and experience matters. This is not a comment on the, what do they call it? They call it a geriacracy or something.
Geriatocracy.
What's going on in America at the minute, which is literally, it's being run by geriatrics, like literal geriatrics. Again, no shade to older people. Age and experience matters. But what really matters is that you don't sink into a comfort zone and you don't try and push yourself to understand other people's issues. The best politicians, they themselves are never going to have all the experiences of all their constituents because it's actually impossible to do that, right? But they go and they talk to people and they engage and they listen and they, that's the whole point, right? You've got to push yourself out of that zone. I was listening to a show where they were talking about it and saying also because we've got an aging population, and they do in America too, that the voter base skews older too, and they're not that interested in making policies that make things better for younger people. But the only way you're going to solve any issues like housing affordability is to make decisions that are difficult for that group who are trying to hold on to their wealth rather than make things better for the people coming through. I think we shouldn't necessarily go, oh, well, you're old so you don't understand, and we should be more challenging and be like, so you're old and that is out of your life stage, so go and fucking listen to some people who are in it.
Mamamia out loud.
If you want to make Mamamia out loud part of your routine 5 days a week, we release segments on Tuesdays and Thursdays just for Mamamia subscribers. To get full access, follow the link in the show notes, and a big thank you to all our current subscribers.
Too many people own dogs.
Including the three of us.
And too many people own too many dogs. There's one less dog in the world, though, because the world's oldest dog has died this week at the age of 31. Now, I think this is a lie.
Oh, I listened to a full report about it.
I read a lot about it because I know
I think
why you
maybe
think it's a
someone
lie.
just forgot and it was a puppy.
No.
Like it was the descendant of the original dog.
Bobby's mum and sibling also lived to be very old. But what is interesting is that Bobby lived to 31. The second oldest dog was a dog named Bluey in Australia. Bluey only lived till like 23. So Bobby is just holding the record by a lot.
Well, he died at a Portugal veterinary hospital over the weekend. Goodness, did he have a good run. Anyway, there was an article this week in The Atlantic that talked about how dogs have basically lost the plot. More dogs than ever are on medication for anxiety. And this piece was actually called, it was written by Rose Horowitz, and it was called Too Many People Own Dogs. If you love dogs, maybe don't get one. And she writes that the rise in anxiety among American humans has been very well documented, but with much less fanfare, we also seem to have entered the age of the anxious canine. A few years ago, a study showed that 83% of vets had reported prescribing dogs anti-anxiety medication, and Google searches for dog anxiety have roughly tripled over the past decade. Pet stores have whole aisles dedicated to products promising to help calm your dog, like you can get sprays, you can get drops to put in their food, you can buy tranquil treats, and there are even special anxiety vests for when there is a thunderstorm. I may or may not have purchased all of those things.
Yeah, of course you have.
And my dogs may be on a lot of medication, both of them. So why is this? The theories, though, for why they're more anxious today, the main one is that we've altered the way pets live. So dogs and cats used to live outside, but now they're mostly indoor creatures, and that's meant that they're living longer because when they do go outside, they're kept on leashes or under supervision. When I was younger, our dogs just roamed the neighbourhood. No one picked up poo. No one had fences or kept their dogs. Leashes, optional. But also because people are having fewer kids, they've begun to think of their pets as children and to actually be helicopter fur parents. And so dogs like Bobby living longer, but is it good for them? It means they miss out on mental stimulation and interaction with their own species. And so they're more likely to be anxious or aggressive. Claire, what's your dog's vibe? I mean, he's just old and he's kind of
He might be giving these
kicking
long-lived
on.
dogs a run for their money, Caesar.
I know. He has terminal cancer and was given months to live over a year ago. So he is just, he won't quit. This article really resonated with me because as I was reading it, I was looking at my dog and he was kind of sitting under my feet and we had just taken him for a walk and he can't walk back up the stairs anymore. You've got to lift his back legs for him, which is becoming increasingly hard the more pregnant I get. I'm like, mate, you're 40 kilos. I can't lift your back legs. And I was sort of thinking, I was like, oh, is this for us or is this for him? And And pretty much the whole time we've had him, we've lived in apartments, and we've been, obviously, you consider what kind of apartment you have. You consider outdoor space. Is there a park nearby? Can we get him to a park? We've lived near some of the best bloody parks in Sydney. But there is a guilt that comes when you think this is an animal that I am sure would love to just be running 24/7. And if not running, then sniffing. And we are keeping him inside because we love him. But I also think that there are certain behaviours of dogs that we perceive as anxiety or distress that are just normal dog behaviour, but because we want to treat dogs as humans, like barking. People are like, my dog barks all day, so I'm medicating them. And it's like, they're a dog. They want to bark.
This article says digging,
Yeah.
barking,
Chewing.
like that's what dogs do.
And dogs are puppies for so much longer than you realise. When you've got an old dog, you realise they were puppies for like 5 years. Like that bad behaviour of chewing and all of that goes for longer than you think. There's a little dog in my family who, when you visit, pees everywhere because he's so excited. And it's like, oh, no, anxiety. And I think he's on some anxiety medication now. And he has stopped peeing. But I'm like, usually if he was outside,
you wouldn't notice.
the weeing wouldn't be a big
problem.
problem. The problem is that he's indoors and he's peeing on people.
This article challenged me because I read the headline, right? And I got right on my high horse and I went, yes, there are too many dogs. You know what annoys me? And I know I'm about to alienate a large portion of our audience, so I'm sorry. I'm like, one of my annoyances is people spending $4,000 on an oodle. Looking at you, Mia Freedman, when there are so many rescue dogs. It's a trigger for me. I always get upset. Lots of my friends have those dogs, by the way, and I'm always very nice to them and I love them, but there's a little judgmental kernel in my heart.
So judgy.
But
I am so judgy of those people.
Reading this article challenged my moral superiority because it also said that part of the problem is we've got too many rescue dogs, and that now that rescue dogs have become very hip, which they have, like it's cool and virtue signally to get rescue dogs, it says that it means that a lot of inexperienced dog people are dealing with dogs that do actually have trauma and anxiety and they don't really know how to deal with it. So they're like, cute little rescue dog, come live in my house. And then that dog doesn't behave like the companion you're describing, Claire. And so they're like, oh, there's something wrong with my dog.
But do you know that since this whole, what you say is trendy, but it's also just an awareness of how many dogs are destroyed, 2/3 less dogs are being destroyed every year.
And it devastates me. I follow the organisation we got Tuna through, Fetching Dogs. It devastates me to see all these little puppies there, and then my mates are like, we're getting from a breeder. It's going to cost $5,000.
In defence of rescue dogs, look, I'm an ambassador for the Sydney Dogs and Cats Home. I'm the most judgy person about people, particularly people with oodles, right? And in my area, there's like a million friggin' oodles. Every dog looks the same. And I've always been like, I will never get an oodle. I will always be rescue. Then lockdown happened. And I'm just going to say it. I am ashamed of myself, but we needed a dog urgently. There was no joy in our household. Things were bad. And so I found a breeder. The dog arrived. She cost thousands of dollars. And she is more damaged, much more damaged than the rescue dog. And the dog before we had beautiful Harry, best dog ever had, also a rescue dog. So I actually think it's not necessarily just rescues are more anxious than other dogs. Like this dog and my parents' dog the same. My parents got a golden retriever, purebred. Never known trauma. Generations of just happy, lovely, milky life and messed up.
Yeah. Idiot.
I think it's because they don't know their dogs. They're allowed on beds. I mean, I have bought so many different beds for my dogs. They get special food. You cook food for your dogs, Holly Wainwright.
I do cook food for my dog. And also the way I feel about my dog and my previous dog, is that about them or is that about me? You know, it's like I love that, especially as my kids have gotten older, I love this creature in my house that I can just lavish all the love on, and it loves it and it never talks back. And she, you know, in my mind, she thinks I hung the moon. She probably doesn't.
No, she does.
She thinks I hung the moon. When you want to rumble and play and you want to be fun, you can be fun with them. When you just want to cuddle on the cat, like they are. But that's all about me, right?
And we know that dogs
Deeply
are
selfish.
good for us.
Yes.
Dogs are good for our mental and physical health. And I look at Caesar and I think in times where I've really struggled, simply having a dog that you know that you have to walk a few times a day and you have to feed, like that is enough. Like that gives such a sense of meaning to your life. But then I do wonder, I'm like, I wonder if that gives him a sense of meaning.
No, when you pat a dog, it releases serotonin in your brain and in the dog's brain. What you say about the guilt and who do we get dogs for, I was talking to another friend of mine. She's got 2 quite big dogs. They had 2. One died, so they wanted to get another one. And now she says we just have so much guilt because we all work. No one's in the house. The kids are older, so they've all got their own lives and are barely at home or they've moved out to university or whatever. And we just look at them and every time we see them, we feel guilty because all they do is just sit around.
Guys, I have a recommendation. You know when something's coming out, you actually think about the fact that it's coming out? That is so rare for me. But I have been aware that Hot Potato, the story of the Wiggles, was dropping yesterday.
Is this a documentary?
It's a documentary.
For adults or children?
More adults.
Hi, we're the Wiggles. Hot potato, hot potato.
They're like the Beatles for toddlers.
These tickets were harder than the Stones and Springsteen.
There's a reason for the colors. There needs to be a psychology of why this hits.
I actually have been excited about this too,
Yeah,
Claire Stevens.
I keep seeing media about it and I was so excited. So it's on Prime Video and it follows the original Wiggles, Anthony Field, Murray Cook, Greg Page and Jeff Fatt in the iconic skivvies from their humble beginnings as early childhood educators to the global successes they have become today.
And also pop stars. They were 2 of them, Paul and Anthony Field. They were in the Cockroaches.
Yep. And I think Jeff was too. But there is just so much that you had no idea about, so many emotional layers to the story.
Did you grow up watching the Wiggles?
Yes.
Oh,
and
wow.
and it's weird. You watch it and it's got all this archival footage and you're almost looking for yourself in the footage. You're like, was I at that concert? Was I dressed as Dorothy?
This is so
Dinosaur?
funny. I
old,
said
yeah.
to Matilda the other day, I said, your first concert was the Hilltop Hoods. How cool are you? And she's like, no, Mum, my first concert was the Wiggles.
Obviously.
Yeah. See, I remember my kids were little and there was literally nothing else to watch. So I became like, I think, you said this too a few years later, obsessed with the guys.
Yeah.
Not in a sexual way, although, of course, you're always like, who's the hottest? And it was always Anthony. But are they friends? Do they hang out? Are they married? What's their lives? Do they have their own children?
And I became obsessed, and I hope you can tell me the answers to these questions. I became obsessed with how much money they made.
So much.
I became obsessed at the point at which Anthony suddenly starts going to the gym and gets his teeth done.
Yeah.
I just became obsessed.
In terms of who's the hottest, actually what was really interesting watching it for me was that actually Greg is a front runner. For me, he comes as he's aged. He's aged. One of my favorite details about it was that apparently Jeff is not good at public speaking. Doesn't really like being on stage that much. If he was allowed to talk, would constantly say inappropriate things. So that's where the idea of him being asleep came from.
Oh, that's what I need to be. I need to be the sleeping member of Out Loud. Did they talk about the part where when they do that finger gesture, like a train with their 2 pointy fingers? I once read or heard them say that that's so that there could never be any accusations of impropriety, so that their hands were always visible when they were being photographed with children.
I didn't hear that in the documentary,
So
but they do.
The doco's good.
The doco is so good and charts the entire journey from beginning to end, because now you've got all the new Wiggles and how they've kind of introduced diversity. And for any parents watching, the psychology of what they do is so considered. And you would just never think that everything from the characters to the songs to things like parallel play, the way they have thought about it so that it is actually enriching for children. You need to watch it. I want to hear what everyone thinks.
If you're on the lookout or the listen out for something else to listen to, in yesterday's subscriber episode, Holly, Clare and I had a debate about an dilemma, which we sort of talk about as being the am I the asshole dilemmas. It's about a photo of a newborn. There's drama, there are in-laws involved, and we were divided. A link to that episode will be in the show notes.
Thank you for listening to Australia's #1 news and pop culture show. This episode was produced by Emeline Gazilas. The assistant producer is Tahli Blackman, with audio production by Leah Porges.
Bye.
Shout out to any Mamamia subscribers listening. If you love the show and you want to support us, subscribing to Mamamia is the very best way to do it. There's a link in the episode description.